Mayor Mamdani, that is looking increasingly likely as we are just less than 12 weeks away from the New York mayor's race. You heard that right. A 33-year-old Democratic socialist, a virtual unknown until just 7 weeks ago, is now on track to vanquish the once mighty Andrew Cuomo, a former governor, to become the leader of America's largest city. I'm Bill Sammon here with my old pal Chris Stirewalt. We both work for The Hill and News Nation, but only you, Chris, are the author of Whole Hog Politics. And today, in this week's edition of Whole Hog Politics, you write the following. With less than 12 weeks to go, Mamdani seems to have not only weathered the initial backlash after his surprise victory, but established himself as the nearly prohibitive front runner. So, Chris, my question to you is as follows. Whatever happened to the idea that Mamdani, after winning this crazy primary upset in June, would get so much oppo research dumped on his head in the general that the moderates would knock him out of the race and Cuomo would go ahead and win? That doesn't seem to have happened. He's ahead by almost 20 points in the latest poll.
First of all, I wish to protest because I wrote this whole piece to say, yeah, there's this New York race, but I don't really care about that at this point. I want to talk about New Jersey and Virginia. And here you are, East Coast media elite, dragging me back to the New York mayoral election. This is I had to lead with it because you have to. I guess the point is the preconceptions about how this race would go. The theory of the case was that Mamdani would struggle in the general election and that Eric Adams, Republican, the incumbent, now independent Eric Adams, Republican Curtis Sliwa, who I will point out has made the ultimate sacrifice. He, in an interview with the New York Times, he will surrender the beret if he is elected mayor. He has vowed that he will not wear the beret if he is elected mayor. Though in the picture in the New York Times, you can see the imprint. He's worn the beret for so long, you can see it across his temples. He wears it
to bed, I think.
It's more of a nightcap, but yes. And that Cuomo would be fighting over the majority of the vote, or the that there would be a sufficient vote share among them to knock out Mamdani, and that the problem, as Cuomo laid it out, was somebody's going to have to get out. Well, this is a Siena University poll. This is I mean, look, it's a relatively small sample. It's a low turnout election. There's a lot of problems with the polling, but this Siena University poll, Eric Adams is clocking in at a robust 7%.
Yeah, the incumbent.
Yeah, the incumbent is 7%, and then he's under the viability threshold, which means once voters know that you don't have a chance to win, you go down from there. So 7 becomes 2% or whatever. He becomes a totally marginal candidate. And if you combined Eric Adams, the independent, Cuomo, and Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, put them all together, they're only matching. So we know the way ranked choice voting works. They're not all going to pick Cuomo as their second choice. Somebody's going to do something weird, or somebody's going to single shot it, or somebody will refuse. Some Republican will refuse to vote for Andrew Cuomo because of the COVID stuff or whatever. And Mamdani is sitting in a really good spot right now. And he's sitting in a good spot because his opponents are unappealing, number one, but number two, he's been quite good at this, right? He has been very good about using the expectations of his audience as a backboard to make his shot, and to say, it's the Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, Barack Obama. A lot of successful politicians have succeeded at doing this. Let your opponents describe you as the most villainous human being ever, that you're the worst person. And then the actual version of you, people go, he doesn't seem that bad. He's not he's not actually wearing a Globalize the Intifada t-shirt. So
and
maybe he's okay.
It's a classic example of, play to the base in the primary, tack to the center in the general. He's trying to come off more as a normie in the general, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, and also the outrage of young New York. New York is a pretty young city, and there was a great piece, and I should know where it was from. I should have included it in the note, but I read a great piece this week about the yuppies used to be They moved right. The youth culture in America moved right 50 years ago. Now the youth culture in America, the managerial class, has moved left and sharply left. And that all augurs to Mamdani's favor in New
Well,
York.
yeah. I mean, in New York, they've definitely moved left. I think the rest of the country, there's some signs that some of the
Yeah, New York's crazy.
Right. Let me look at this for a minute from Cuomo's perspective. And you wrote the following in your note this morning. The former governor has time to change the race, but that's a tall order when you're such a well-defined quantity in voters' minds. He can't sneak up on anybody the way Mamdani could in the primary. And it's fascinating to me because, you know, Cuomo thought this race was going to be his path to political redemption after, you know, basically being run out of town on a rail from the governor's office 4 years ago amid a sexual harassment scandal. So he decides to throw his hat into the mayoral race, New York City, gets absolutely shocked in the primary, getting beat by this kid who is literally half his age, 33, Cuomo is 67. And then he took a minute to think about whether he wanted to go again a second round with this guy. He took a week, I don't remember how many days it was, but this is a considered judgment. Do I want to risk getting smacked around again and humiliated, or can I take this guy out? And he would have to run as an independent. And he decided, I'm going for it. And here we are now, less than 12 weeks out. He's down, Cuomo down by almost 20 points. My question is this: if he doesn't figure this out, is his political career essentially over?
I don't know what would be left. But look, we should remember Andrew Cuomo had a really good theory of this election when he launched his candidacy. Eric Adams just wreathed in the stench of political corruption, and Donald Trump. Trump got him off the hook on the corruption charges he was facing, but then put the stink of Donald Trump on him, which is not something you want to have with a New York electorate, especially in a Democratic primary. So Cuomo sees the lane. All I have to be is not Eric Adams, and I can win the Democratic primary. Adams makes the choice. I'm going to leave the Democratic Party and I'm going to run as an independent. And Cuomo found himself in a race that was much, much harder to win because his reason for being in the race, which is let's get rid of Eric Adams, ceased to be. Mamdani embraced the idea of I'm actually the get rid of candidate, and I want to get rid of Andrew Cuomo, who everybody knew because he had been governor since the earth cooled, right? He was governor for 12 years or 60. He was governor for some insane length of time. Everybody knew him. And his father had been governor. Everybody has an opinion about Andrew Cuomo. And Mamdani used that against him, and he won the primary. So that theory of the election was destroyed. So Cuomo comes back. Now, that all having been said, Cuomo can change this race. And the way that you change the race, he's done something politically smart. He has locked in on the fact that Mamdani has a rent control department himself. And New Yorkers who have rent control departments love their rent control departments, but they hate the people who have them. They hate that the people who don't have them deeply resent the people, because all the economists left and right will tell you rent control doesn't work. It distorts the housing market. It makes less housing available and drives up prices for other people. So Cuomo he show us the lease. He's making these accusations, and he is dialed in on this as a personal attack. It's basically a tu quoque argument, which is, who are you to lecture us about housing costs in New York City when you're living on the dole, basically, that you have this sweetheart deal? That's the kind of attack that can connect with voters. And what Cuomo has to do is run the opposite race that he had intended to, which is a referendum on socialism, on radicalism, on Palestine. He has to do all this stuff, and so far he's doing it. And I definitely do not count him out.
Chris, let's talk about redistricting. There's a game called Texas Hold'em, and I guess there's a game called Texas Fold'em, because it looks like the Democrats in Texas are giving up on their bid to stay away from the state so that there wouldn't be a quorum, so that they wouldn't have to resign themselves to the reality that the Republican-controlled legislature in Texas was going to redistrict, was going to redraw the congressional district map in their state to give Republicans up to 5 additional House seats, which could make a huge difference in the national picture because, as you know, the current House of Representatives is Republican by only, is it 1 or 2? I don't remember, but it's a raise.
It depends on who's out sick that day. But yes, it's a
historically
narrow
margin. And so if Texas can somehow, rejigger things in such a way that Republicans nationally have 5 more members of the House, that would be huge. Now, of course, this has triggered a redistricting arms race across the country with California now. They're going to come up with 5 Democratic seats by redrawing their maps, and other states in Florida and Ohio and Indiana and you name it, they're all getting into the act. I guess my first question to you, Chris, is there's got to be a better way. I know gerrymandering has been with us for literally centuries, but is there a better way to do the apportionment of the U.S. population in a way that Congress can represent it in a more equitable way?
Well, while you were out swanning around on vacation, the HOG of last week was about what we ought to do. The gerrymandering, the drawing of districts, as the Constitution holds, is, and by the way, the Constitution doesn't even hold that there have to be districts, right? The death of at-large districts, many states used to just say, we have 5 members of Congress, we're going to elect them statewide. And that was struck down in the 60s because southern states were using it to disenfranchise black voters, and it was violative. It was ruled of the Voting Rights Act, et cetera, et cetera. States can draw their maps how they want to. And that's important because it is a political power for the states. It is a power the states have. And when Democrats in 2021 said, we need to end gerrymandering, we need to put the federal government in charge of the voting procedures in the states, I said, are you crazy? We don't need to accrete more power to the federal government. But of course, when they passed the For the People Act in 2021, they imagined a world in which Democrats would have the majority forever. And I have to think that there are smart Democrats who feel very relieved right now that Donald Trump, federalizer of the DC Police Department, innovator of government authorities, is not in charge of a government that has increased powers over how states do their election. Decentralizing power over elections is a good idea, and we should keep it. So gerrymandering is always going to be with us because people are going to exercise their political power. My point was that we need to expand the size of the House of Representatives, which hasn't grown. We have the same size House of Representatives that we did in 1913, and that's preposterous. The size of the districts are too big, but also the districts are too valuable. It's too the reward for gerrymandering is worth a lot of opportunity cost. Republicans are going to pay a serious price for this stunt in Texas. They're going to be punished. It's going to cost them. I bet in the end we'll say that it was a mistake. They netted out fewer seats because of the backlash that they got. I think that's probably true because this stuff is unpopular. But it seems worth it because each district in a House of 435 people is too valuable. So if you increase the size of the House, which has been forbidden by law since 1929, if you increase the size of the House, then each district and therefore each gerrymander becomes less valuable.
So correct me if my history is wrong, but I'm going to try to run through this quickly. The House of Representatives, when it started, had 65 members. And over the years, it grew as our population grew. And as you say, in the 20s, a cap was placed on it at 435 members. And the population of the United States continued to grow, but the number of representatives in our House did not. Therefore, at this point, I think each House member represents something like 700,000 people.
Close to
800,000 people. How many new House seats should we add, in your view, to make this a more reasonable proposition?
I say 50%. Just give us a 50%, another
No,
218.
218.
Uh, and you don't have to put them in one day, right? Congress could decide, here's how we're going to do it. And by the time we get to the 2030 census, we're going to build it out. We're going to add some now in response, and then we're going to add some more. And you can just set it. You can set it and forget it, as Ron Popeil would tell us. This is how we're going to do it till we get to the number of 218. The proportional representation of Americans is an important issue. I believe that one of the reasons our politics is so terrible is that we don't have enough competitive districts, and it's a self-reinforcing problem. We have too few competitive districts. This is true. It makes our politics more polarized because we don't have enough people from swing districts. But because we don't have enough swing districts, right, it makes the problem of polarization worse. Polarization is both a cause of and a consequence of a polarized politics, right? It's the too few districts, too few swing districts, too few places where people have to be good. If we live in a country where only 25 or 30 districts are actually competitive, we're not getting good government, and we have to find a way to bring down the value of gerrymandering so that you just imagine these debates where there's a dozen more House seats in Texas. Imagine these debates where there's a dozen more House seats in Florida. That makes sense to me.
You don't worry that those would eventually all go the same way as the current House districts, which is to say, even with an extra 218 districts, it would get down to only a handful of competitive races, and that, in fact, all of these new House seats would become gerrymandered just like the existing ones.
They would all be gerrymandered. I assume that some states do this well. Some states have good government. You've heard the response in many places where they have good government. Indiana, New Hampshire, other places where Republicans said to J.D. Vance, no, we're not doing that one. The gerrymandering is unpopular. People don't want to do it, but sometimes, especially in states with big populations, it's just irresistible. I assume if you increase the size of the House of Representatives, those places will still gerrymander the districts. My point is the value of the gerrymander becomes less. It becomes less valuable, and therefore the opportunity cost is not worth it. And also, just from a human experience standpoint, the problem with those maps is that they are an insult to voters. And this is in Illinois. You have the hilarious district in Illinois that goes from like the Mississippi River and cuts up like a scythe's blade into the middle of the state. The point of districts, they're supposed to be geographically compact, and they're supposed to represent a group of people, right? It's supposed to respect historical, traditional, cultural boundaries. Like you, as a Clevelander, I don't know what the districts in Cleveland were when you were growing up, but I assume there was an East Side district, and there was a West Side district, and there was a downtown district. That the geographical and cultural roots, the connection was considered important. And I think it should be important. And I think when you have more districts, you have a greater chance. Nobody can represent. We're on track after the 2030 census to have each district represent 900,000 people. It is very hard to draw a line around 900,000 people that in any way respects geographic distance or cultural similarity.
What are we going to do with all these extra lawmakers? You know, one of the actual considerations back in the 20s when they put a cap on this was that they're like, where do you put them all? Like the actual, but you actually think we should build dormitories for members of Congress.
I'm not here to speak ill of Nicholas Longworth, former Speaker of the House. But I would suggest that the decision in the 1920s, note that it was 1929 when it was capped, was that Republicans who were living fat and sassy in the post Woodrow Wilson majority era of the 1920s, Republicans were feeling it. And they recognized, they looked across the country and said, if we keep adding districts, we're going to dilute our own authority. We're going to keep diluting our own authority. A columnist for the Washington Post did a great thing, asked architects, what would we do at the House of Representatives if we actually expanded it? Now, they have crazy cakes number. They're talking about what if we added 1,000 people? I don't want it to be the Star Wars intergalactic Senate. I'm not looking to have 1,000 more people because
it already
has
looks
to be
like the
as
Star
small
Wars
as
bar as it is, but
exactly. It should include as few people as absolutely necessary because we want them to be in community with each other. We want committees to matter. We want people to form relationships and do the work of legislation. But I love the design that the architect came up with, which is you put the speaker's dais in the round, right? That you make more seats in the House by putting the speaker's rostrum right there in the middle. And that when the president gives the State of the Union address, he or she will be standing in the middle of the House. And there's more than enough space if you reconfigure the chamber to fit not only another 218, but if you wanted to, another 1,000. I don't want to, but I do believe in dorms. This was in response to one of our great, alert, astute readers who said, I think that we should have a 2,000 person intergalactic Senate Congress and they should vote virtually. I want the opposite. I want these people to be good at their work. And I think we should get rid of the housing allowance for members of the House. And they should be offered dormitory space where they can eat and work out and live in the same place, where they can, instead of giving them money to try to get an apartment at Navy Yard so they can get their sushi carjacked, they should have a safe, secure, pleasant, but not too commodious, but not too comfortable facility to live in when they're in DC. Hopefully that would build a little frisson of cooperation.
Yeah, and having it in the round reminds me of a Yes concert I saw back in the 70s when they were in the round. It was a very cool experience. Chris, let me ask you a trivia question. I have to ask this because we're already on the topic. What was the highest number of Congress people that we've ever had in any House in the history of the United States?
What was the largest number?
When was Congress the biggest?
When was Congress the biggest? And you mean just voting members?
Members of the House.
You're not talking about delegates.
Official members of the House.
When was it the biggest? This is a fantastic trivia question because I know there's going to be some amazing answer. So I don't know. Tell me. I want to know.
437. In 1959, when Hawaii and Alaska were brought in, they gave them each a House seat, and then they waited until 62 to dial it back to 435.
Amazing.
So for a brief interregnum, actually, while I was born in 59, there were 437 House seats. Let me ask one last question on this topic of redistricting, Chris, and let's bring it back to the sort of the news of the day. You have a number of states that are now contemplating getting into this arms race, if you will, when it comes to reapportionment. The general consensus seems to be that the Republicans have a slightly easier path because, the Democrats are in states where they've set up independent commissions that set up the redistricting.
Those
and goody-goodies. Now it's coming back to bite them. And in California, they'd have to actually have a vote or referendum to overturn this. And so that you got to go through a lot more steps on the Democratic side. So given all of that, when you cast your eye over the big picture coming up on the midterms for next year, do you think the Republicans are in a position to have an advantage of a few seats if everybody deploys their weapons here? When the dust settles, would the Republicans have an edge or no?
I think it's a loser. I don't know. I mean, the most important number isn't how many seats they get in Texas. It's what Donald Trump's job approval numbers are 15 months from now, right? That's the one. Squidging the numbers here. So let's just focus on Texas. So they take these seats. So no Democrat could win a bunch of these seats. So you make them half as safe, basically. You take them from R plus 20 districts to R plus 10 districts. If Donald Trump's job approval numbers are 40% or lower, The Republicans will lose multiple R plus 10 seats because people don't even know what House district, many people do not know what House district they live in. They're voting, the persuadable voters, we always have to remember the biennial electorate is a third smaller than the quadrennial presidential electorate. The Trump MAGA non-college white working class base doesn't turn out in nearly the kinds of numbers for midterm elections. That's how Republicans got pantsed in 2018. The high propensity and why they failed to deliver on what they thought was going to be a red wave in 2022. I believe that this is a strategic mistake. This is short-term thinking by Republicans. Look at what it did to the candidates for Senate in Texas, right? John Cornyn's going to call out the FBI to drag them back. They're going to investigate. We're going to do this stuff. You've got this wild legal theory being put forward by the Attorney General, Ken Paxton. They're in a race to say who can be the most redistricting. There is no swing voter in Texas who thinks that redistricting is important. There's no persuadable voter in Texas who might vote for Colin Allred in a general election, who also thinks that it is essential and crucial that Texas go through a wrenching redistricting fight in order to help Donald Trump have 5 more members, Republican members in the House. So I'm real elemental about this stuff. Midterms are referendums on the party in power. The Republicans have unified control of Washington. How the midterms gonna go are going to be a reflection of how voters feel about Donald Trump. If they feel good, the Republicans could hold on by the skin of their teeth. If they feel bad, you can draw any map that you want, and they're still going to get their teeth kicked in.
Let's briefly touch on one other topic, Chris, and that is you mentioned it earlier, the President Trump's sort of takeover of D.C.'s police force in his effort to crack down on crime. You know, Joe Scarboro, of all people, no friend of Donald Trump, has... Not lately, he was. Anyway. He has come out and warned Democrats that they're walking into a trap by opposing this crackdown on crime. You know, in 30 days, or less than 30 days now, when this thing elapses, Trump will have to renew his effort to maintain control over the police force. You know, well, he can always have the National Guard there because that's his prerogative as president. But in terms of nationalizing the police force, or federalizing it, I guess, he would have to get permission from Congress. Senator Schumer is saying no effing way, and he didn't say effing. And you know, a lot of Democrats and some media people are saying, look, Democrats, be careful. You're walking into a trap because you're going to end up on the side of, you know, you're against, you know, law and order. You're against, you're with the criminals. I mean, I know this is being exaggerated, but that's the way it's going to be framed. Is Joe Scarborough right?
Well, you've set yourself up here, buddy. I'll tell you what, you didn't want to talk about the Virginia gubernatorial election, and you opened the door wide here. Abigail Spanberger, the Democratic candidate for governor in Virginia, was endorsed this week. This was very interesting. The Virginia Police Union endorsed every Republican running for office except for governor, where they chose Abigail Spanberger over Winsome
the Democrat.
Sears,
they endorsed the
Democrat.
Governor.
Yeah, they picked the Democrat
but on every
for governor,
other
and
ticket, every other race, they went Republican.
Why? Because Abigail Spanberger, who came from a law enforcement family, has made a whole point from the early days of defund the police. Nope. People deserve to feel safe in their homes. People deserve to be. It is good for people to feel safe. Police are not the problem. And also, Winsome Earl Sears looks like she's going to lose, and the cops, I'm sure, would like to say, "We were with you all along. We were always with you, Mrs. Governor, Madam Governor." But the stupidity of the false choice that this is a media. I hate to retreat to media analysis, but the stupidity of the narratives here, the competing narratives. There's one narrative in which DC is a hellhole, a benighted hellhole. I forget all the words that Donald Trump used, that it's carnage and it's an emergency. Well, or DC is safe and great and me worry. This is an utterly false choice. Democrats who want to oppose Donald Trump on this, I should say there is a complicating issue here for Democrats. They want DC statehood. They really want DC statehood. And I believe they are sincere in wanting it, that it aligns with them. They describe it's sort of like America's Gaza. If you listen to Democrats talk about about me living here in the District of Columbia, but so they are opposed to anything that is a reduction of home rule for the District of Columbia. But it is also that the problem here, the debate here, shouldn't be, is DC safe or not safe? The answer is DC, like a lot of cities, has seemingly intractable problems with crime. Democrats who are not grown up about this. Megan McArdle wrote a fantastic piece that everybody should read. Sorry to direct people to another outlet, but everybody should read Megan McArdle's great piece about this in the Washington Post this week, where she basically says it's not or, it's and. Donald Trump has a point. Democrats have a point. And the central point for Democrats is, what are you doing, comma, bro, question mark? Why are you so interested in what's going on at the Kennedy Center? Why are you so focused on taking control of the District of Columbia? I thought you had a summit to go to. I thought you had other things to do. And I think there are legitimate concerns that Democrats can express about Trump's everything, all the time, all at once overreach, inventing each day new authorities for the executive branch. That's a reasonable concern. But saying, how can you say this? DC's crime rate is down. Well, it's down to just horrible rather than ungodly.
Chris, you are also the host of the Hill Sunday television show on Sunday mornings.
That right, brother.
What might you be talking about this Sunday on the Hill Sunday?
Russia. We're gonna get a big dose of that. We have former Ambassador Kay Bailey Hutchison will join us. I'm very interested to talk to her. We have Adam Smith, Democratic Congressman, Foreign Affairs, serious individual. He'll join us. And I apologize to the Republican whose name I can't remember right now. We were booked more recently, and I apologize. George Will is on the panel. We'll have a fantastic almanac. We'll have a great breakdown. I don't know what more you people want from me.
This sounds big.
And I give and I give.
That's all the time we have for this week. I am Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal Chris Stirewalt. We will see you next time on Whole Hog Politics.